A psychologically twisted man. Just how far would he go to satisfy his own desires? Following the photo in front of him, he carefully dressed the girl in a beautiful dress. Then he even thoughtfully applied makeup to her face. After finishing everything, the killer carried the girl over to the dining table. But even more horrifying than that, there were already 3 female corpses around the table, posed like lifeless dolls. So what exactly is going on here? The story begins when the female lead, Allison, wakes up from unconsciousness. The moment she opens her eyes, she's completely stunned by the horrifying scene around her, because she's trapped inside a dark basement, and beside her lie several female bodies. Terrified, Allison quickly struggles to her feet. She checks the pain in her abdomen and discovers a severe wound there. It's obvious that she was attacked before losing consciousness. Thankfully, she somehow survived. Unlike the girls beside her, she hasn't become another cold, lifeless body. Allison painfully pulls out her phone, preparing to call the police, but there's absolutely no signal down here. Left with no other choice, she endures the intense pain and slowly crawls toward the basement exit, hoping to catch a signal from outside. But just as she's about to try, her phone suddenly dies from low battery. Before Allison even has time to react, she hears the sound of a door opening nearby. The moment she hears it, she doesn't dare waste a single second. She quickly crawls back to where she first woke up and pretends to be a corpse again. A large, heavy-set man named Pete slowly walks into the basement. Luckily, he doesn't notice anything unusual. Pete walks over to the table and removes his mask. Then he pulls out a needle and thread and begins stitching a tear in the mask. Judging from the strands of hair attached to it, the mask was clearly made from human skin. Moments later, he suddenly walks over to Allison's side. He casually lifts one of the female bodies and carries it upstairs. Allison has no idea what he plans to do. But one thing is certain, this man is an absolutely ruthless monster. The moment the lights go out, Allison finally opens her eyes again. She carefully walks over to the table, planning to use the needle and thread to treat her wound. First, Allison sterilizes the long needle with a match. Then she slowly stitches the wound on her stomach shut. One painful stitch at a time, she endures the unbearable pain, not daring to make even the slightest sound. Just as Allison finishes and tries to rest for a moment, she suddenly hears a faint cry for help nearby. She quickly turns around to look, only to discover that one of the corpses has actually woken up. It turns out the girl, just like Allison, had only fallen unconscious. After speaking with her, Allison learns that the girl's name is Emily. Emily says she was suddenly attacked by a stranger while walking home. When she woke up, she found herself trapped here. Allison tells Emily that they're locked inside a basement, while upstairs lives a ruthless killer. Although they don't know what he really wants, they absolutely cannot make a sound when he comes downstairs. Otherwise, they'll face a terrifying fate. Seeing the wound on Emily's stomach, Allison returns to the table again, preparing to use the needle and thread to stop the bleeding. But when Allison turns back around, she realizes Emily has passed out again from her injuries. As the light near the staircase suddenly turns on, Allison realizes the killer has come back to choose another body, but she still hasn't cleaned up the tools on the table. Panicked, she quickly rushes over. As Pete's footsteps get closer and closer, Allison doesn't even have time to pick up the glue that fell on the floor. She can only switch off the light and lie back down in her original spot. Although Pete doesn't notice anything suspicious, his presence alone terrifies Allison. After observing the bodies for a moment, Pete chooses the youngest girl among them. Then he lifts the body and prepares to leave. But just as he reaches the staircase, he accidentally steps directly onto the glue on the floor. Pete puts down the girl in his arms and places the glue container back onto the table. That's when he suddenly notices the blood-stained needle and thread. The moment he sees it, he instantly realizes that someone among the bodies has already awakened. Pete grabs a knife and walks over to the bodies. He prepares to inspect each girl one by one. Just as he's about to make his move, Emily, who had passed out earlier, suddenly wakes up. Unfortunately for her, before she can even react, Pete forcefully restrains her. After dealing with everything, Pete hoists the girl onto his shoulder once again and slowly walks out of the basement. Only after hearing the door close does Allison finally begin to relax. She knows very clearly that she has to escape this place as soon as possible, because as the number of bodies decreases, the chances of her being chosen only grow higher. Just as Allison is feeling completely helpless, a phone suddenly begins ringing inside Emily's pocket. Surprisingly, Emily's phone actually has a signal down here. Without hesitating for even a moment, Allison quickly grabs the phone and answers the call. On the other end is Emily's husband. The moment he realizes the voice isn't his wife's, his tone instantly becomes anxious. Allison tries to ask the man to call the police, but halfway through speaking, the signal suddenly starts cutting out. Desperate, Allison struggles toward the staircase again, hoping to find a spot with a stronger connection, but just as she reaches the doorway, the man completely hangs up the call. Right as Allison prepares to call back, she hears Pete's footsteps approaching once again. This time, Pete still doesn't choose Allison. Instead, he drags Emily's body away. Allison thinks she's narrowly escaped another disaster, but unexpectedly, the phone suddenly starts ringing again. Pete immediately stops what he's doing. He walks over to Allison, pulls the phone out of her pocket, and stares at it for a moment. Luckily, Pete doesn't become too suspicious. He simply tosses the phone onto the ground. Watching Pete walk away, Allison finally lets out a breath of relief. Now the basement contains only herself and one remaining female body. If she doesn't escape before Pete comes back again, the consequences will be unimaginable. Allison searches the girl beside her, hoping to find a phone or anything useful, but she finds absolutely nothing. Afterward, Allison sits beside the table, trying to calm herself while thinking of a way to escape. Only then does she realize she accidentally fell asleep while thinking earlier. Not daring to waste another second, she quickly grabs an awl from the table. Then she rushes over to the window, preparing to pry off the wooden boards covering it. She wants to see if there's any way to escape through there, but Allison soon discovers that behind the wooden boards is another thick layer of iron bars. Even though she can see the outside world, she doesn't dare shout for help, because she's afraid of alerting Pete upstairs. When Allison spots Pete walking past above her, a wave of fear instantly washes over her. Then once again, footsteps echo near the doorway. With no other choice, she can only continue pretending to be dead. But this time, Allison isn't nearly as lucky. Pete walks straight over to her and lifts her onto his shoulder. Allison doesn't dare struggle at all. She can only let him carry her away. Afterward, Pete places Allison onto the couch. The entire room is extremely neat and organized. There isn't even the slightest trace of blood in the air, making it obvious that this isn't some kind of place used to dismember bodies. Pete then walks into the next room and carries out Emily's body. Slowly, he heads outside with it. Taking advantage of the moment, Allison quietly walks into the next room to look around. That's when she notices a photo of a woman inside a glass frame, and both Emily's clothes and makeup were styled to match the woman in the picture exactly. Allison is instantly confused. Could this killer possibly have some kind of disturbing obsession? Just then, footsteps suddenly sound from behind her. She quickly rushes back to the couch and pretends to be dead again. The moment Pete walks into the room, he immediately removes Allison's clothes. Then, based on another woman in the photographs, he dresses her in a beautiful dress. He even carefully applies fashionable makeup to her face. After finishing everything, Pete carries Allison into the dining room next door. The other bodies from earlier have also been dressed up in different outfits. They sit around the dining table, as if they're attending some kind of disturbing dinner party. Pete then turns on a soft piece of music. At the same time, he starts a slideshow nearby. Inside are family photos of 3 people, but the young boy's face in the middle has been completely scratched out. Judging from his appearance, The boy is most likely Pete as a child. A while later, Pete brings over a large glass of orange juice and places it on the dining table. While Pete is away, Allison quietly removes her sunglasses. Because she has been under intense stress for so long, she's now extremely thirsty and exhausted. So Allison picks up the orange juice and drinks it in huge gulps. But at this moment, she has no idea that this drink will later become the key to the shocking twist ending. Soon, Pete wheels Lorraine over to the dining table. Her face is pale, and she's wearing a breathing mask over her mouth. Allison assumes Lorraine is another victim who was kidnapped. When Pete leaves the room again, she quickly removes her sunglasses and tries speaking to Lorraine. The moment Lorraine hears Allison's voice, she slowly turns her head.
Helen.
Allison looks completely confused because she has no idea why Lorraine keeps calling her Helen. Allison assumes the woman must have mistaken her for someone else, so she prepares to explain things to her. But unexpectedly, Lorraine suddenly becomes extremely emotional. She angrily tells Allison to get out immediately. At the same time, she shouts that all of you humiliated me, and all of you deserve to suffer for it. Because Lorraine becomes too agitated, she suddenly loses consciousness on the spot. Hearing the commotion, Pete quickly rushes back into the room. He's holding a birthday cake in his hands, apparently preparing to celebrate Lorraine's birthday. Only then does Allison realize that Lorraine is actually Pete's mother. After waking up, Lorraine stares at Allison while continuing to mumble about Helen. At this point, Allison finally understands that Lorraine has mistaken her for Helen. From Lorraine's words, it becomes clear that Helen was once her close friend who betrayed her. Not only did Helen have an affair with Lorraine's husband, but she also teamed up with 3 others and ruined Lorraine's life completely. Just as Lorraine passionately continues talking about the past, Pete suddenly notices a lipstick mark on the glass.
Don't come any closer. Let me go or I'll kill her.
Allison immediately warns Pete to let her go, otherwise, she'll hurt his mother. Meanwhile, Lorraine continues ranting about the past. You all lied to me. You all betrayed me. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Allison suddenly cuts Lorraine's oxygen tube. Then she immediately runs toward the front door, but when she reaches it, she discovers that every door in the house has already been locked. Moments later, Allison notices a landline phone nearby. She quickly calls the police, hoping they can trace the address through the call. But Pete suddenly grabs Allison and tightly wraps his hands around her neck. Just as she's about to lose consciousness, she quickly grabs a knife from the dining table and drives it straight into Pete's thigh. Using the opportunity, she finally breaks free from his grip. With nowhere else to run, Allison rushes back into the basement once again. Then she smashes all the light bulbs, plunging the entire room into darkness. Very soon, Pete follows the sound downstairs. The basement is small and cramped, leaving almost nowhere to hide. Pete slowly walks deeper into the room, but all he sees at first is the remaining female body lying on the floor. So he switches on the desk lamp nearby, and that's when he finally spots Allison, hiding in the corner. Allison quickly searches Pete's body for the keys. At last, she unlocks the door leading to freedom. The moment she sees the morning sunlight, Allison instantly breaks down in tears from relief after surviving such a nightmare. But what she never expected was that the moment she stepped outside Pete's yard, a sharp pain suddenly exploded inside her stomach. Her legs give up beneath her, and she collapses onto the ground. It turns out Pete had secretly mixed a deadly poison into the orange juice Allison drank earlier. Back then, Lorraine used poison to take revenge against the friends who had betrayed her, but even after that, her hatred never disappeared. Completely consumed by psychological obsession, she trained her own son to hunt down isolated young women every year on her birthday, recreating the same revenge scenario again and again to satisfy her twisted mind. Unexpectedly, the poison drink ended up being consumed by Allison instead. Tragically, after finally escaping from the killer's grasp, she dies right outside the killer's front door. because of that single drink. In the end, all of her desperate efforts become a cruel joke, but at the very least, Allison succeeded in stopping the brutal Pete and the deeply disturbed Lorraine. In a way, she also avenged the girls who lost their lives before her. This movie quickly pulls the audience into a desperate game of survival and escape. By pretending to be dead, Allison narrowly avoids the killer's grasp again and again, and in the end, she fights back with everything she has. Just when it seems like she's finally survived, everything falls apart because of one poisoned drink. This brutal twist from hope to despair hits directly at the audience's emotions, and more than anything, it leaves behind a chilling reminder: never casually accept food or drinks from strangers, because sometimes the deadliest traps are hidden inside the moments you least expect.